Welcome Wargamers, Doug here from 2+ Stuff, and today we are taking a look at the newest Skaven Battletome. I am so excited to jump into this book, but I want to say something really quickly up front. This was sent to me like the day that I am recording this, which is a day before I'm allowed to share these videos, so I have not looked through this really at all. So we're going to be going through it together, learning in real time, kind of what they did for the Skaven. And I'm going to say up front, I loved the last book from a balance perspective of... the units themselves all seem really cool. My problem with the last Skaven book was army construction. It's such a pain to build an army. You can actually have entirely different collections that can't work together, even though they're all Skaven, because of the way it worked. So we're going to take a look at that, this book with that kind of eye and see if they improved Skaven for the 3rd edition. Thank you so much to Games Workshop for sending me this book early, and if you would like to get a copy with a little bit of a discount, I have a link in the description down below for Noble Knight Games. Any purchases through them do go to support the channel, and it means the world to me, guys. It really does. And with that out of the way, let's get straight into the action with the Skaven Battletome. Now we are going to do a little bit of a yada yada through the lore and artwork and painting and all that kind of stuff. I'm going to review those on the channel proper. We're just going to focus on the actual playing aspect today, because that's what we're here for. So, Allegiance abilities, Skaven battle traits. Lead from the back. Subtract 1 from hit rolls for attacks made with melee weapons if the target is a friendly Skaven hero that is not a monster and is within 3 inches of any friendly Skaven units that have 3 or more models. Look out, sir, but special for Skaven. Scurry away. I say look out, sir, it's melee weapons. That's the point, there's the difference. Scurry away. In the combat phase, when you pick a friendly Skaven hero that does not have a mount to fight, you can say that it will scurry away. If you do so, that hero can retreat. I love it. Strength in numbers. This is one we saw previewed on the community article. Add 1 inch to the range of melee weapons used by friendly Skaven units for every 10 models in the attacking unit to a maximum of 3 inches. That is a massive change. It's allowing you to just kind of swarm horde your enemies. We're gonna fast forward here to the end. Let me just check something out. Yep, clan rats still come in packs of 20. So that's a lot of dice you can dump on somebody. The Great Clan's battle traits. So you have a few of these various things. Moving into the Great Clan's battle traits, they have a section for each of the various Great Clans. Let's talk about them here. First one is Masterclan. This is going to be your Grey Seers, name characters, big kind of stuff like that. Skilled Manipulators. Roll a dice before you allocate a wound or mortal wound to a friendly Masterclan hero that is not a monster. Instead of making a ward roll for the wound roll, it can be allocated to a friendly Masterclan hero that is not a monster. If that hero is within 3 inches of a friendly Skaven unit that has 3 or more models on a 3-up, that wound is transferred. Basically, you can dump wounds onto a unit nearby. Next one is always 3 claw steps ahead, which I like that. You can use this ability if you include 3 or more Masterclan heroes in your starting army. After you pick a friendly Skaven unit to be your first unit to run in a phase, you can make a run roll for that unit. You can use that run roll in place of any other run rolls you make for friendly Skaven units until the end of that phase. After you pick a friendly Skaven unit to be your first unit to attempt a charge, you can do the same thing. You can basically use the same roll across multiple units. Same thing after you pick a friendly Skaven unit to be your first unit to fight in the phase and make any pile-in moves for that unit. You can make pile-in moves for each other friendly Skaven unit on the battlefield that's within 3 inches of any enemy units. Designers note, this does not prevent a unit from making another pile-in move, so you're constantly surging around your opponents. That is an interesting rule that I like quite a bit. Mainly for the pile-in than anything else, but yeah. Now keep in mind, it doesn't change their pile-in distance, so if they're outside of 3 and they don't have any special rules that modify their pile-in range, it's not 3 inches of free movement, it's a 3-inch pile-in, so there's a difference. We go over here to Clans Moulder. Prized creations. At the start of the first battle round, after determining who has the first turn, but before the first turn begins, you can pick 1 Hell Pit Abomination in your army to have a mutation from the table opposite. If you include 3 or more Master Moulders in your starting army, you can pick each Hell Pit Abomination in your army to have mutation instead of just 1. So if you have a bunch of heroes, we're assuming that they are all bringing their best weapons to bear in the form of Hell Pit Abomination mutations. The same Hell Pit Abomination cannot have more than 1 mutation, and an army cannot include duplicates of the same mutation. Okay, so we got a few things here. One is Toughened Sinews has a wounds characteristic of 16 and a save characteristic of 4 up. So let's compare that to what he is base. I'm not going to go through every single war scroll because I would lose my mind, but it seems fair as they only have one unit that this matters to. So normally there's 14 wounds with a 2d6 move and a 5 up save, so that does make them a bit tankier. Gives them +1 base, and what's nice is that it changes the characteristic rather than giving them +1, so you can still give them all-out defense and stuff like that. The next one here, Lumbering Behemoth. The unit has a move characteristic of 7 inches. In addition, charge rolls to this unit automatically a 7. You don't roll the dice. Compared to his basic of 2d6, that's a fairly average run. I mean, it makes them very consistent. I like it. Charge rolls are always a 7, so you can do the math to figure out where he needs to be at any given time. I think that is a dang good rule. Next one here, Quivering Bulk. Add 1 to each roll you make for this unit's Avalanche of Flesh. It's just a charge damage ability, so I'm not super worried about showing you that one, but it makes his charges more aggressive. Next is Accelerated Regeneration. You can use this unit's regenerating monstrous ability in the enemy hero phase as well as your hero phase, so he can constantly be healing up. I believe that's provided he's not in combat. Correct me if I'm wrong. The best Warpstone Spikes. You can re-roll the dice when you use this unit's Warpstone Spikes ability. Let's check that out. Warpstone Spikes. Each time this unit is affected by a spell or the abilities of an endless spell, you can roll a dice. On a 4-up, ignore the spell effects or the endless spell effects, and this gives you can re-roll that. That's not bad at all. And the last one here is Backup Organs, which I like. You can re-roll the dice when you use this unit's Too Horrible to Die ability. Too Horrible to Die, let's see how they change this up. The first time this unit's destroyed, before removing it from the battlefield, roll a dice and look up the roll on the table below. On a roll of a 1, it's dead. On a 2 through 4, all units within 3 inches of this unit suffer D3 mortal wounds, and then you remove it from play. 5 or 6, it's alive. This unit is not destroyed. Instead, heal D6 wounds allocated to it, and any wounds or mortal wounds that remain to be allocated to it are negated and have no effect. That is nice. I like it quite a bit. I wish this had included a footnote of like, you can't hand to dust it in 1 round, maybe, but I guess even if you hand to dust it, it still gets a chance to come back, so I guess that's fair. And just to put this in context, Hell Pit Abominations, let's get those price points here. Single model, 245 points each, and you'd also want to bring a Master Moulder, which are at 90. Now remember, if you bring 3 of these, you can give as many Hell Pit Abominations, these mutations as you want, provided that you bring them. So it's going to make up a bulk of your army there. So as far as Moulder goes, I like that. I feel like the Masterclan ones were more about scheming, about like focusing on your heroes staying alive and how they do stuff on the battlefield, like being able to do the charges and that kind of thing, or use the same die roll across multiple things. Clan's Moulder is an interesting one because it does incentivize you to bring these great big beasts, but if you're into that, it's awesome. It's like, that's the list that I would make. Going over to Eshin. Remember, there's not a ton of these, but they are there. Masters of Murder. At the start of the first battle round, after determining who has the first turn, but before the first turn begins, you can pick 1 enemy hero on the battlefield, add 1 to hit rolls and wound rolls for attacks made by Clan Eshin units that target that hero. If you include 3 or more Clan Eshin heroes in your starting army, add 1 to hit rolls and wound rolls for attacks made with melee weapons that by friendly Clan Eshin units that target enemy heroes in general. So what we're getting a theme here for, if you haven't noticed it, is rather than bottlenecking you in terms of your hero choices and what's battle line and what's not, instead they are saying, if you lean into one of these clans, you get these additional rules. They're rewarding you for doubling down rather than bottlenecking you. When our earlier discussion came up about army building in Skaven, I love this approach so much more. Like, is it perfect? I don't know. I don't think so. I don't believe anything is, but I like it more. Absolutely. So if you have your 3 assassin characters, you gain access to this. I like it. Next one up here is Clans of Verminus, Mighty Warlords. This is a heroic action that you can carry out with 1 friendly Claw Lord instead of picking 1 from the table of core rules. If you do so, pick one eligible command trait from pages 70 and 71 that this Claw Lord does not already have and apply its effect until the end of this turn. If you include 3 or more Claw Lords in your starting army, you can carry out this heroic action with each friendly Claw Lord instead of just one. The same command trait cannot be picked with this ability more than once in the same turn. Now, this is different than, say, the Slaves to Darkness one where you can have multiple generals that all have command traits, because one, you're not locked in, meaning you can't like move what the command trait is in a given unit in the Slaves to Darkness one, but you can here. The opportunity cost is that you're giving up a heroic action. So if you were normally going to use that to do, like say get a command point or something, there is a cost there. You're not doing that, you're doing this instead. But I do like that because it does give versatility. And again, if you have 3 of them, which why wouldn't you, like Claw Lord heroes are just like murder machines, it gives you a big toolbox. Now we can discuss, the traits here in a second, if they're actually good or not, but hey, I like it. But it basically makes each of these heroes a little Swiss Army knife. Next is Clan Skryre, Warpstone Sparks. If you include any Skryre heroes in your starting army at the start of the battle, but before either player starts deploying units, you can roll a d3 and add 3 to the roll. If you include 3 or more Clan Skryre heroes in your starting army, you can roll a d6 and add 3 to the roll. The result is the number of Warpstone Sparks you receive that you can use during the battle. You cannot use more than one Warpstone Spark in the same phase. Each Warpstone Spark can be used once per battle to carry out one of the following Warpstone Spark abilities. I swear they're not paying me every time I say that. So here's your 3 opportunities to use this. In the hero phase, you can reroll a casting, dispelling, and unbinding rolls. At the end of that phase, though, you roll a die. On a 1, you suffer d3 mortal wounds. The next time you can use it is the shooting phase. Pick one friendly Clan Skryre hero, then pick up to 3 different units that all have the Skryre keyword. Wholly within 13 inches of that hero, you add 1 to the damage characteristic of missile weapons used by those units until the end of that phase. At the end, you roll a die. On a 1, that hero suffers d3 mortal wounds. And the last one here, in the combat phase, if you do so, add 1 to hit rolls and wound rolls for attacks made by that hero until the end of that phase, and then you roll a die. So that one only affects the hero, but some of these Skryre guys actually have some really good weapons in melee. Of course, leave it to the Skaven to invert the idea of wizards being cowardly in combat. And last one here is Clan's Pestilens, which again, they have their Great Plagues, but this list looks sort of reined in a bit. When you make a chanting roll for a friendly Clan's Pestilens priest, you can add 1 to that chanting roll for each other priest wholly within 13 inches of the chanter. In addition, if the chanting roll for a prayer chanted by friendly Clan's Pestilens priest is 6 or more, you can pick one of the following Great Plagues to manifest in addition to the effect of the prayer. Each Great Plague can only manifest once per battle, and no more than 1 can be manifested per turn. So that's what it was before. Well, it's not quite what it was before, but it's very similar. It's an addition to effect, but you're not always guaranteed to be in the right position to use it, kind of a thing. So what's nice is that it is optional though. So it's not like if you are in your deployment zone, you do a prayer, you get access to a Great Plague, but you can't do it because you're not in range of any enemies. Like, you're not worried about that. So the first one is Bubonic Blight Plague. If this Great Plague manifests, pick the nearest enemy unit within 13 inches of the chanter. That unit is infected with the Bubonic Blight Plague. If several enemy units are tied, you can pick which one's infected. The infected unit suffers 2d6 mortal wounds. If the infected unit is destroyed by those mortal wounds, you can pick another enemy unit within 6 of the last model to be slain in the infected unit. That unit is now infected and suffers d6 mortal wounds. If that infected unit is likewise destroyed, you can pick another unit within 6 inches of the last model to be slain. That unit's now infected and suffers d3 mortal wounds, and you keep doing this until there are no other units within 6 inches. So this is like chain lightning. You're going to have one big blast on a unit that's within 13, the nearest one, and then if there's anyone within 6 of that, then your opponent does it. Now, one thing I will point out for this from a practical gameplay perspective is I know that when I pick up my orcs, like if I get 8 mortal wounds at me, I just reach down and I grab a whole bunch of them. This is going to be one, if you roll this and you choose to use it, please, before you roll to see how many wounds you do, broadcast to your opponent, please remove them one at a time. It's going to matter. You see what I mean? If you delete a unit, whatever the last model to be picked off the table actually matters, because now we're talking real ranges, 6 inches. So like just scooping them all up in a big handful like I am totally guilty of is not going to be helpful for Skaven players. I'm going to try to remember that, but if you are a Pestilens player, be sure to broadcast that to your opponent, because what you don't want is, you know, you scoop up a whole bunch of models and you go, wait, was that guy within range? He was definitely within range of one of them, but was it the last one? You know what I mean? Just kind of help them help you. But I like the idea, even though it requires a little bit of, you know, working alongside your opponent. The next one is the Crimson Wheel Curse. If this Great Plague manifests, pick the nearest enemy unit within 13 inches of the chanter. That unit's infected with the curse for the rest of the battle. If several enemy units are close, you can pick one. I'm going to skip that next time. The infected unit suffers 1 mortal wound. In addition, at the start of each turn, the infected unit and each other enemy unit within 1 inch of the infected unit suffer 1 mortal wound. Probably less interesting for sure, but it's cool. I mean, it chips away at them over time, which is great. It's just, I don't want to have to keep track of that every single turn, but whatever. The next one here is the Red Maw Plague. If this one's manifest, you pick the nearest enemy hero within 13 inches of the chanter. That hero is infected with the plague. You can pick if there's a couple that are in the same distance. At the start of the combat phase, if the infected hero is within 3 inches of any other units in your opponent's army and is not within 3 inches of any units in your army, then you can treat that hero as a friendly unit until the end of the combat phase. This is awesome. So like, there's no limit on how big it is. So let's say I'm within 13 inches of Archaon and he's the closest hero. Okay, this is a bad day to be a rat if that's the situation. I'm just going to throw that out there. But what it means is I can control that hero in the combat phase. So if there is anything within 3 inches of Archaon, he's going to be able to punch it, and I get to use my opponent's heroes against them. Now, of course, generally speaking, it's going to be smaller heroes than that, but when you're playing against very aggressive armies, like, say, the Dragon lists from Stormcast, or something like that, being able to use their heroes against them is phenomenal. Keep in mind, however, it's a once per game thing. Like, you don't keep getting control of them, but it's a nice little one punch that maybe they weren't expecting. And lastly is the Never Plague. If this plague manifests, you can re-roll chanting rolls for all friendly clans Pestilens for the rest of the battle. So that's definitely a round one, go-to, I guess. And actually I was wrong, that wasn't the last one, I just thought it was one big paragraph, but the last one is Undulant Scourge. If this one manifests, pick the nearest enemy unit within 13 inches of the chanter and roll a dice for each model in that unit. Pick one if there's multiple options. For each 4-up, it suffers a mortal wound. That could be very good against hordes and stuff like that. The Never Plague is your go-to first one. If you round one manage to get it, which you should because you have all your priests together in your deployment zone, go with that. Re-rolling for the rest of the game, awesome. And that brings us to enhancements, but I want to talk very briefly about what we just finished, right? You have to remember, if you're playing Skaven, all of these rules are constantly in effect. So for example, if I have a list with one let's say Claw Lord, and I have one Eshin Assassin and one Skryre hero, yeah, that's going to be a pain in the butt to keep track of, but I do get all of those abilities. I might not get the bonus that if you have 3 or more of something, but that's okay. So with this, you can truly build the list that you want to do. I am absolutely in favor of this. Like I said before, is it the perfect system? No, but it's a so much better solution to creating these very crazy Machiavellian complex Skaven lists that we see in the lore because all the various clans work for one another. And there's always some turd on top who thinks he's God, but that didn't translate in the last book because you had to lock yourself in so hard. Whereas this, it's very much a choose your own adventure. It can be as simple as you want. If you want to keep it simple as a Skaven player, pick one of these and lean in. Obviously you can sample parts from the rest, but just leaning into one will help you immensely cut down the number of rules, and I think it's great. Moving now into enhancements, there's just going to be a lot of these things, man. There's so many ways to build your Skaven. I'm not going to read all of these, I'm sorry. What I will say though is that a lot of these are tied to specific things, so there's only a few that anyone can do. Devious Adversary in the combat phase. If this general fights within 3 inches of an enemy unit that has not yet fought in the phase, add 2 to the attacks characteristic of this general's weapons until the end of that phase, so he's better at hitting people people first before they hit him. But the rest of them, or I should say most of them, have Masterclan hero only. And then it'll kind of go through a few options for you. Clans Moulder hero only, Eshin hero only, Claw Lords. There's a bunch for the Claw Lords because, of course, you can take different command traits based on what you do with that heroic action we talked about. Go ahead, check them all out. Like I said, I don't typically do the man who reads book type thing. Relics are very much the same way. A lot of them are tied specifically to certain heroes, which I like. You don't have to have a particular type of army to gain access to them. So if you have an army that's almost entirely, let's say, Clans Verminus units, like, Clan Rats, Storm Vermin, that kind of thing, and you take one Skryre hero, they can take the artifact that only they can take. There's no restrictions on that, so that's really nice. The spells, at first glance, don't seem to be terribly different. You have your Skitter Leap, which is always good, Scorch and Death Frenzy. For the Warp Volt Galvanism, which is the Skryre stuff, a lot of these seem to be almost identical to what they were before, but I don't feel like the spells were the problem. The list building for Skryre was the bigger issue because you weren't enough bodies. And then, of course, you have your prayers for Clans Pestilens. Going through the various units, I've kind of done like a surface level look at all of them. They didn't really lose anything. They didn't delete any war scrolls to my knowledge. The models definitely need an update for some of them. I'm not going to lie about that. But in terms of making this army so much more accessible to new players, I think this is a slam dunk. Let me explain what I mean by that. See, before you had to choose who your general was, and then you had to pick a clan to be a part of, and that restricted a lot of the options that you had available. Now the options are wide open. For example, Clan Rats and the Storm Vermin are battle line, period. Not battle line if, just battle line, which they always should have been. You can take them in any kind of army you want, and while you could do that before, have them be battle line, you did get restrictions when you tried to go into any one of the particular clans. Now, you get rewarded for leaning into clans by your hero choices, because you're spending very real points on those, and also this note section, okay? So let's go with, for example, we'll do Eshin and Moulder as examples for how they've made it so that you can have thematic armies based in a clan, okay? Let's do Gutter Runners first. You can include one unit of this type as battle line unit for each Clan Eshin's hero you include in your army. So, rather than hard incentivizing you, restricting you with what you have access to units-wise and what that battle line keyword means, now, whenever you take a hero, you get a unit to come with them as battle line. So, if you do the 3, assassin heroes, you get 3 units of Gutter Runners that can be taken as battle line. They're not mandatory. You can just do Clan Rats if you want, but it frees up the design space for that. There's no hard restrictions. There's only options. And the same thing goes if you have Pestilens, you can take Plague Sensor Bearers as one of your battle line choices for each hero. Giant Rats, same thing for Moulder. And in that way, they allow you to truly design whatever kind of list you want. Faction, there is only Skaven. Don't worry about what clan they're all a part of individually. Even though they have Clans Moulder, that's more there for internal spell effects and command abilities and that kind of thing, not so much list building. And as far as allies go, the only one they got is Maggotkin of Nurgle if your general is Clans Pestilens, which I think is actually a really big good point in their favor. So friends, of course, this isn't a deep review. I'm not going individual war scroll by war scroll. There's so many in this book, and there's so many command abilities and so many command traits. It's a massive model range. And one of the things that I've always said on the channel regarding Skaven is, for being Games Workshop, one of their most iconic, intellectual properties, certainly for the fantasy side of things, right? I mean, Space Marines are #1, but Skaven are their thing. How come the Skaven, the last book, was so restrictive and they tried to keep you on such tight rails with the clans? That issue to me has been resolved, right? The problem with the last book is it was so hard to make any kind of starter product for the Skaven army because they had such hard walls between the clans. Now, they could reasonably come up with a box, like a Vanguard set that has Clan Rats and Storm Vermin, because that'll work no matter what, and it's a good baseline, and then you can just expand from there by picking aspects of the clan. Before, if I had Clan Pestilens and I wanted to try Clan Skryre, I had to buy an entirely new army list. There was no crossover. Now, what I can do is something like I start with Clan Verminus or something like that, so, Clan Rats, Storm Vermin, that kind of thing. But now I can actually, just buy a Skryre, Acolyte and one thing of, what are they called? Storm Fiends or whatever. You just buy a hero and a unit that they can take, and boom, they're in your army now. And you can thematically make this one, I guess kind of like themed army that they're all on the same page and they're all like having the same goal. Or you can have one core story of like your Claw Lord who just hired this Skryre guy for a mission, and you don't have to expand any further into that clan if you don't want to. It's not an all or nothing pass fail kind of army list. Instead, it does what Skaven do in the books, which is I have my core, my leader, the person that I've built the story around, and everybody else is like a footnote in their grand tale, and you can just kind of put them into your army piecemeal. I guess a la carte is sort of the phrase. While it doesn't compel me to start playing Skaven, really, I will say this makes me so much more excited for the faction. I mean, it opens up a massive toolbox for players who are exceptionally smart, smarter than me when it comes to playing the game. And for those of us who are more narrative focused, it releases all the restrictions for creating the story that we want to do. I mean, in the last book, there were stories in the Battletome that you literally cannot make those armies in the game, which to me is the ultimate like fail of any given Battletome. With this, if you just have enough room for the right heroes, they're all bringing contingents that reflect them, like their personal entourage or their test subjects or whatever you want to call it, depending on what kind of clan it is. Maybe it's their devotees, if they're Pestilens, that kind of stuff. You can bring whatever you want. You're just incentivized to lean one way or the other, and you're rewarded if you try to make a thematic list by picking a single clan. I'm really excited to see Clan Skryre lists with clan rats just flooding the board. I'm also excited to see Clans Pestilens focused lists that have a Master Moulder and a Hell Pit Abomination in them, because they get to do all the cool things that they want to do in the same army. And so when I was talking about reviewing this book, that's the thing that I really wanted to hit on, is just that I feel like all of the hard restrictions and walls and limits and stuff have been released so that you and I, whether you are a pro gamer on the tournament circuit and you're just looking for the biggest conceivable toolbox, this is up there with like Seraphon. Also, if you're a narrative player like me and you want to create a very specific story, there's not much you can't do with this book. It may not be the best, I mean, not all the command traits and the spells and stuff are particularly sexy, nor are the individual stat lines of most units. They're Skaven. They're taken in droves because everyone's expendable except for whoever's story is being told. But I do feel like this book does a much better job of reflecting that. So friends, that is it. If you would like a deep dive into the individual units and stuff like that, please let me know in the comments down below. I'm more than happy to do that. It's just that I got the Sylvaneth book, and the GHB all on the same day, so I'm trying to like really rush record these. So going war scroll by war scroll really isn't an option for me. But this book was important because this one and the Sylvaneth one were Battletomes that I want to like the armies, but the way that they're written has always been so fundamentally awkward to me that they've always kept me away. This one because of army construction, the Sylvaneth because of terrain rules. So if you want to check out my thoughts on that book, I'll also have that on the channel today. Thank you all so much for watching. Again, please do leave your comments. I would love to learn about them, and I'll catch you next time. Happy wargaming.